And gentlemen, and welcome back to the Product-Led Festival. I hope you're enjoying all of the content so far today. Welcome if you're just joining us for the first time today, just now. It's great to have you with us. I will be getting out of the way as quickly as possible, but just a few things to mention before we jump into our next presentation. As always, you can submit your questions to our speakers through the chat window. Just drop them in there as you think of them. We will tackle as many questions as we possibly can at the end. I'd also encourage you to connect with every speaker, but especially Marcus, who's coming up shortly, on LinkedIn. You can follow up post-event with them there. Whilst you're on LinkedIn, open a new tab, go to productledalliance.com, check us out. You can join our free Slack community. There's loads of articles, loads of things for you to get your teeth into completely for free. And then we do also have some paid membership options as well. We've got loads of courses, we've got loads of templates. It's great to get you involved. So straight on with the next session. So I'm delighted that we have got Marcus Andrews with us. So I'll invite you to join me, Marcus, on camera. Marcus is the Director of Product Marketing for Pendo. And he's joining us today to talk about building your product to prevent inefficiencies, which I'm sure is going to be very useful to everybody. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to you, Marcus.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, James. And hello, everybody. Like James said, I think if you have questions, like while I'm going through any of the content I've prepared for you today, just drop your questions in the chat. Like I would love, as much as I've got some things to talk about, I would love to know what challenges you're facing and ideas you have as I go through these and kind of what ideas it sparks. But I'm very excited to talk to you all today. I am the Director of Product Marketing at Pendo and have been working at software companies doing product marketing for about the last 12 years. And I think I've always really, really gravitated towards product-led companies. Whenever there is a product team that's really that you can really believe in. I think, as a marketer or a salesperson or just as a recruiter, really anybody, when you have a product, when you have a company that's really product driven and really feels confident standing on the strength of their product and using that product in innovative ways, I think those are the type of companies that I want to work for. I spent a lot of time trying to convince people that is the future. I feel like this audience already believes it. Hey, Naval, thank you for dropping in your LinkedIn. And yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, friends. I'd love to connect. But like I said, I spent a lot of time trying to convince people of this product-led future. But I feel like everybody here gets it and really cares about it. And so I'm excited to talk. What we did at Pendo recently was we ran a big study around inefficiency. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm basically going to share the results of our report. When we talk about product-led, I think a lot of the time we talk about product-led growth. And that's great. But I think the benefits of product-led extend well beyond growth. And I think for a lot of different reasons, growth was the priority of a lot of companies and teams. And the tip of the iceberg. And one thing I would really encourage everybody to do, and honestly, that I'm a little scared of or nervous about, I think I have a healthy nervousness about, is that product-led, the benefits have to be more than just growth. They have to benefit other teams. Otherwise, it's just you're really running uphill and it's challenging, and if you're not experiencing the full benefits of being product-led. So I'm going to talk a lot about other benefits other than growth. I will touch on growth too. But what we did is we ran this big survey, and we basically found, we talked to, and I will show you the survey so you guys can get it too. But we talked to hundreds and hundreds of product leaders and business leaders, and we asked them what are the most inefficient parts of their business. And then we created a top 10, and that's sort of what I'll go through. I don't have time to go through all 10. I'll see how many I can get through. But that is kind of what I'm going to talk about today. And yeah, let me know as I'm going through it. If you have questions or ideas, I would love to pause and address them. So that's me. And why I think this is important, the setup for all of this is that, we have, especially in software, we have really entered in, it's not just software though, it's really all businesses. We have entered into sort of we're just in this period of massive change. There's been more change in the last 3 years than there's been in the last decade. Rising inflation rates, a war in EMEA, valuations soaring, valuations declining, people having to cut costs. We're dealing with all sorts of macroeconomic like volatility. And what it's really resulted in is that like, this is a poor summary of all the change and everything it's meant for businesses. But for the most part, people have really quickly had to move towards efficiency, have had to cut costs, have had to lower spend, have had to figure out ways to do more with less, right? Get more productivity from the same number of people. And we see at Pendo, we see our customer base doing this, and we want to help. We want to help people understand it and figure it out. And so like that, what we did was that we tried to figure out what are the most common inefficiencies of businesses, and then how can you address them with your product. Like I said, we went from this era of being a growth at all costs to kind of efficiency. This is the report we ran. These are the 10 inefficiencies we found. So the top 10, I don't think they're especially ranked, but these are the most common inefficiencies you will find in a business. Don't have time to go through all of them. I'll share the link to the report. But the 5 I'm going to try to get through are these. The first one is related to support tickets. The second one, onboarding. The third, churn. The fourth, the product priority and product roadmap process. And the fifth, growth. So as I will go through these pretty quick, but as I'm going through, hit me with those questions. Okay. So the first thing we found is that an inefficiency that's plaguing a lot of companies, like I think the very most efficiency, number one, is that they really struggle to handle support calls and tickets, and the volume of support calls and tickets, and the how long people have to wait to get help. It's a very glaring, big inefficiency. It's easy to quantify in numbers, how much time your support teams spend on the phone trying to help people, but it's also very easy to quantify in like customer pain, right? You know, if your customers have to go through a support channel and they're not able to use your tool by not doing it, and it's painful for them, you're going to hear it. The symptoms of this inefficiency: high volume of repetitive tickets, that's key. Long time to resolution, low customer satisfaction, growing support costs. A lot of companies, they look at this and they're like, well, we got to, support's part of the deal, right? Like we can't grow without continuing to grow our support team. And that is really problematic because it just means that the costs there balloon. So if you're a product person, is this your problem? Like 100%, right? Like, and you can solve it. The 3 biggest ways we see people using their product to solve for this is, the first is like trying to identify friction inside of the product. And what's great about this one is that you can get out in front of support issues, because the best way to solve a common reoccurring support issue is to make it so that the issue never even happens. So the tickets never even show up. Very easy way to do this is to identify friction in your product, where people are rage clicking, where people are stuck in loops, where people can't figure out what to do. Got a comment from Luke. Hi, Luke. Awesome. Thank you for using the chat, Luke. Anybody else has questions or want to jump in the chat? Yes. Okay. We're all LinkedIn connecting. I love it. Identifying this friction and then complementing it with feedback you're getting from your users, trying to solve that. You can also solve issues before they happen in the product by connecting with users and nudging them in a way that's going to help them, right? Like there are a lot of costly support tickets that can be solved with a tooltip in your app, just a little mouse over that says, hey, if you want to do this thing, click here. Or if you're trying to do X, go here. You can save users a ton of time. You can deflect a ton of support tickets from your support team and save a lot of money. And then also something we see Pendo customers do consistently, successfully, is to create an in-app resource center. And this is really product-led service, right? Like you are using your product to deliver service to your customers. So Resource Center creates like a self-service in-app way to learn something new, ask questions, get help, answer your questions, all without having to have humans do that. Very effective at solving this inefficiency of an inefficient support channel. Okay, the second one, struggling to on new customers at scale, right? So I think there is a lot of inefficiency in how much human time and effort that it takes to get a person successful with your product quickly. It does not happen naturally. If you create a product and you take a user and you drop them into your product, even if they are super smart and are an expert at what they do and know your product, they're still going to struggle to figure out how do I complete my job to be done in your product. How do I get value out of it immediately? How do I do the things that are going to help me get set up faster for success? The symptoms of this is that it's usually users don't understand the product even after training. Users can't help themselves. They have to reach out to support. And then there's this like long ramp time for customers. And you can also for employees too, right? Like I think a lot of people have experienced this when joining a new company. Like if you don't have good onboarding, if you don't know how to use the tools that are at your fingertips, your onboarding, the ramp time, the time it takes for you to be successful as a human takes a lot longer. So how we see people solving this, similar tools. I mean, I think that this one is maybe more familiar, but you can use your product to onboard customers, right? You can use your product to onboard employees. And more, I think companies have figured this out and are doing this. What I love is onboarding that's like gets out of your way. I think the very best onboarding is the very best in-app product-led onboarding is super light. It's not 20 screens that try to educate me on every single thing I could do or need to do with the product. It's there and I know it's there and I know I can use it, but it's not in my face. And when I do click on it, when I need, when I want to say, okay, what's this feature? How do I use it? It gets me to value in like 3 screens or maybe 2 screens. And like, there's not a lot of copy. Maybe if it's something really technical or challenging, there's a video. But the benefit here is that, when someone learns something by actually clicking through it and doing it inside the tool, it's a much more effective learning process. So this is, we've seen it be really, really effective for our customers. I think it's becoming something that more and more people do, but in-app messaging, in-app onboarding, Resource Center is another tool that solves for this really well. And also product analytics. So product analytics are great because it's important before you can do really good onboarding. You could, of course, build an idea for how you think people should use your product or how you want people to use your product. But until you know how people actually use your product and like the paths they're taking through your product, or people like you build something and then there's how people use it. And those two things can be very different. And people are unpredictable. So understanding the data behind the paths that people take and then trying to figure out is very effective. Chris, you have a question. CS is typically tied to number of human agents. How do you effectively geometrically scale CS? How do you scale CS? I mean, I like the way I think about all this product-led stuff, and let me see if there's an image here, probably not. But the way I think about all this product-led stuff is like you're sort of, especially with sales and services, but even marketing and other teams, you're sort of creating like a superhuman, right? You're not using your product to replace what humans do. You're simply creating like a stronger human. You're like, it's not, it's like RoboCop or like, it's like you've taken a human being and you've enhanced them with technology and your product and they can do more. And so you're able to have a smaller CS team as you scale because your CS team has the right data to know what accounts to go after first. And so they're much more productive. They waste less time on outreach. They also have more important issues to solve because the product can solve some of these lower value issues. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of how I think about it. Like, I always think about like RoboCop, which I don't know if is a good example because I don't know how human RoboCop was. I think he was initially. That movie is very, very old. Okay. Good question though. Thank you, Chris. If other people have questions, let me know. Don't ask me questions about RoboCop, clearly. Okay. The fourth inefficiency, I don't know if this is my third, but fourth in the list, is high and unpredictable rates of customer and employee churn. Churn is like, in this new era where we have, you have to be efficient and you have to have product market fit. You cannot have a leaky bucket. Software is where I've spent all of my time, but trying to acquire an investment from VCs at a great valuation, if you have issues of churn, if your bucket is leaky, is basically impossible, right? Like you have to have really strong product market fit. You have to have really high net revenue retention to be successful in this environment. So that's what this inefficiency is about. And it's very common. Everyone has this issue, right? It's sort of a spectrum. Like some people have it really bad. Some people have it only a little bit. We can always improve here, but like no company is, immune to challenges of churn. The symptoms of this inefficiency is that you have a very hard time identifying customers who are at high risk for churn. You also have high customer churn. That one's straightforward, or employee attrition. And then you also have likely poor adoption of the software you build or buy. That last one is very important because it's a leading indicator. Like if you've already got churn, or if you don't have the ability to identify customers who are at risk for churn, sort of too late, right? Like, okay, they churned, what do we do? They're out. But adoption is, at Pendo, we have the data, we have this, we ran a study, and it was a very clear correlation between low adoption and high churn. And it makes sense, right? If people aren't using the tools, if you aren't finding success, the lower the adoption, the higher the churn. And it's the opposite too. So the higher the adoption, the easier it is to upsell and cross-sell folks. So what you can do to solve this, again, how we think about this, product analytics are an amazing tool to help understand this, right? Like data is 100% your friend here, because basically like you can use it to identify at-risk customers. So I think this is still the idea. I was talking earlier about like there's product-led growth and there's like product-led services. And I think this idea of product-led services, how do you use your product to help do that? Looking at how people use your product is the best indicator of like who you need to help first, who's at risk for churn, who is doing really, really well, where they're struggling. And so if your services team or your sales team have the ability to understand who is using what, or more importantly, who is not using what, it's a really, really effective tool to reduce churn, to retain more dollars, to upsell customers. There's a question around indicators of at-risk customers. The biggest one is what I've been saying, is lack of product usage, right? And like usually it's not like people don't use the product at all, but you can, I know I'm not a data scientist, but I know our data science team has run studies where it's like, hey, if we see a customer is using 5 apps inside of Pendo, they are extremely likely to be correlated with like a high NPS score and renew and buy more things. And so trying to understand, that formula for you. And like, of course, if they're not using anything, that's definitely a churn risk, but maybe there is one product that everybody really, really uses. And if they start using another one, or if they use a feature inside of that product, their risk for churn goes way down. So trying to understand that in your business is what's really helpful. The other tools I think that we see work really well. You have, it's important to get kind of macro usage data, but it's not always going to tell you the reason why people are unhappy or happy. You still need quantitative or qualitative feedback from your users. So just asking people, of course, works. It works for product teams. It works for CS teams, marketing teams. If you go out and you talk to customers, you can understand what they need, what they like, what they don't like. But doing that at scale is hard. And so using your product to collect data from users, NPS, collect feedback, open-ended questions that you're asking them can be extremely helpful trying to figure out like what are the more qualitative reasons for why people might churn. And then just fighting adoption, right? Like once we've found an issue where there's low adoption in the product, how do we combat that? How do we fight it? Like you can obviously make the product better or do something different, but that's pretty expensive because you have to have developers change the product. So we've seen a lot of success using in-app guides to increase adoption and awareness and action of users, right? So it could be as simple as, you could say like, okay, as soon as people start using 2 products or 2 features inside of your product, churn goes down. How do we get people to try that second product? And maybe they just didn't know about it, right? Maybe they just had zero awareness that this was a product that even existed in your app. And that happens a lot. And then if they do know about it, maybe they are like, also something we've seen a lot is that, people are, we don't like change, right? Nobody likes to change. And so even if you are doing something the hard way, it may seem easier, even though there's a product that can help you and speed you up and save you time and reduce your time. You're just really used to doing it the manual way. Like there is data that I have pulled and gone through in spreadsheets just because I'm very comfortable, with doing that in a spreadsheet. And then felt really silly because I was like, oh, wow, I can just do this inside of a product with a few clicks. But I was doing it the other way because I didn't know, I was hesitant to the change. It's like, oh, I have to change my behavior. And so using in-app guides to increase awareness and then change user behavior, extremely effective. Okay. All right, I'm going to speed it up here a little bit so I can get through the next two. The next inefficiency is spinning your wheels on what to build next. This is extremely expensive, right? And it probably isn't going to be something that is palatable at all. I think when product teams had a little bit more wiggle room here in the past, but there's just a lot more scrutiny on product teams, I think, to build the right thing. The high ROI thing, and to get it wrong less. And that is really the core job of product teams, right? Is like, help us prioritize the roadmap, help us understand what customers need, help us understand what's going to push the business forward. And when you get it wrong, and there's a lot of development time put into that, extremely expensive and a little bit painful. So symptoms of this product: no visibility into product usage feedback to inform priorities or products or IT roadmap prioritization. If you don't have basically what this one means is that there's a lot of product teams that are out there kind of shooting from the hip, right? Like they're just guessing, and they're guessing because they've talked to customers. They're not guessing. They've talked to customers. They've built an idea. They have good intuition. But that it really doesn't scale, and it's really dangerous because you still use your intuition and you still talk to customers when trying to figure out what to build. But when you augment it with data, you become like this RoboCop again, right? Like you all of a sudden have this technology and this really powerful tools that are going to help you make better decisions. All right, I'm going to jump. I want to save some time for questions. We got about 7 minutes left, so I'm going to jump to how do you solve this? How do you use your product to get better at product development, to have more efficient product development? You stay really in touch with users by collecting and analyzing their feedback and tracking sentiment. When you are constantly looking at this, when you constantly have your finger on the pulse of the customer base and how they feel about issues, you learn much, much faster. When you can use data like product analytics and qualitative feedback and combine them and make build your plans and theories and ideas off of that, they get much, much better. And then also, I think like having a great road mapping process, having a data-informed roadmap that internal teams are bought into, that your executive team understands, and they understand the decision-making process behind why you're making choices, it helps a ton too. Okay. All right. I think this is the last one. Okay, perfect. So if think about your questions. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. Now's a great time. This is the last one. So I'd love any questions or ideas about any of this, but very curious to hear what you guys think. The last one is related to growth, right? A lot of companies, they told us that their growth, the way they grow is just very inefficient. Their sales cycles are too long. There's too many one-on-one touch points. The only way for prospects to educate themselves on the product or talk to a seller is to talk to a seller, to talk to a human, to reach out and schedule time and book a meeting and get a demo, and it just slows things down. And in the sales process, time is money, right? And I think sellers everywhere spend too much time delivering initial basic demos, educating people on what is the product, how does it work, what kind of value they'll receive. And you can solve all of that with the product, and you're going to gain a ton of efficiency. You're going to get a ton of time back. And what we've seen work is, using product-led tactics like self-guided tours, free trials, freemium, building a product-led growth motion, using your product analytics to track and understand users and prospects and their behaviors, so that you can decide where to put PQL points and what features to make premium. how to install the right limits, and then using in-app messaging to move those people either to a way where they can buy or move them to sales. I mean, I think a lot of salespeople are still really, really important. They still help you close deals. Sales humans close deals a lot better than a product ever will. But if you use your product to educate them before they talk to sales, save sales time, usually the customers enjoy it too. It meets their expectations better. So yeah, question from Leanne. Let's move over to questions first. Here, I'll leave this screen up while I answer Leanne's question. But if you want this inefficiency report, you want to see all 10, you want to know like what are the biggest inefficiencies out there, how, I try to map them against your business, and then how you can solve them. I check this report out. And if you're in product, I think now is an amazing time to like reach across the table and help some other teams solve some of their largest business challenges, because it's going to help you have a bigger impact on the ROI of your business, help you have a bigger impact on efficiency. So you're not just a feature release manager or a project manager, you're actually really driving the business forward. So check it out. QR code, if you scan it with your phone, you can get the report. All right, so Leanne asks, which area of improvement would you recommend an organization start with, specifically if you're an enterprise organization? So yeah, I mean, usually for enterprise organizations, what I've seen work really well and what's really interesting is that when you are a really big company, a little improvement can have a massive impact. And so if you are able to identify friction inside of your app, and that can solve something that's generating support tickets, the scale could be enormous, right? And there was LabCorp as a Pendo customer, and they weren't using Pendo, and they installed Pendo, and they had, I think there was these two bugs in their product that were known, but there was just a lot of like unknowns about like why they were happening or what was causing them. And when they got product analytics, they were able to understand why the bugs are happening, truly figure out like, okay, what can we do to solve them instead of guessing? They looked at the data, and the results were like millions and millions of dollars in reduced support costs. And it was just these two little bugs that they found and figured out the right way to solve for. But the results were massive. So that's the thing I love about, big companies when they apply some of these, is that it's really helpful for them. It can have this huge impact because they're at this massive scale. Great question. I think there's time for one more. And my LinkedIn's in there, but I'd love to connect with you all. So I would, if you want to jump on LinkedIn and connect, just shoot me a message. If you have a question, follow up, go for it. James is probably going to kick me off soon, but any other questions out there?
There's one there from Nikki. I'm not sure if you saw that one.
Nikki, thank you. Any advice on in-app announcements via Pendo frequency? We have a larger than ideal burnout from in-app messages. Totally. Great question. I mean, I think this is something that I worry about a lot, right? Like we never, Pendo creates in-app guides, the ability to message your users in-app. We never want that experience to feel interruptive or annoying, but it can happen. So there's a lot of things we've been working on to control the easiest thing to do is to say, like, do we need a guide for this solution? Like this problem, is a guide the right thing to solve it? And then also make sure you're coming back to your guides to try to measure if they're effective or not. We have two products that help with this, two features. You could conversion tracking on guides and then experimentation on guides. And it basically helps you understand like, okay, I implemented this guide. I'm going to come back. I'm going to let it run for a month. I'm going to come back. I'm going to check to see if it's working. If it is, great. Let's change it and make it better. If it's not, let's get it out of the product. So there's a lot you can do here, but that's one thing I would say is like create a conversion for all of your guides and then measure them. And if they are not doing anything, you're not creating your desired outcome, get them out of your app. Okay, thank you, everybody. I think we're at time, but I really appreciate the questions. Really appreciate, you could be anywhere in the world and you're here with us, so I appreciate it. And it was great to chat.
Absolutely, and thanks to you as well, Marcus. It's been great to listened to you talk, and I'm sure everyone will have got some really useful stuff from that. So we do appreciate you taking the time, and Pendo taking part in the event and supporting us as well. So thank you very much. So we're going to move on to the next session in about 15 minutes or so. So just make your way back to the agenda. You can launch that webinar room already, and it will give you a countdown, and we'll see you over there.